I've got one here that obviously I can't answer, and that is someone's asked me how do people smuggle things into prisons. And I still have a considerable amount of friends at Woodford, which is in Queensland, which is the prison I got out from. So it would be very dumb and fucking disrespectful of me to blow things up based on contraband in the prisons up there. I would never do that. It's just not something that I can answer. I'll go to the next one. What makes a girl a 10 out of 10? What makes a girl a 10 out of 10? I don't really believe that there are any 10s walking around. I've never seen one. I think that if you load up the Victoria's Secret angels, the fucking actual angels, not these like she-beasts that are coming out of the US, but the actual like fucking top tier bikini models, I think they're 9 out of 10s on average. And I think what makes them desirable, obviously, their beauty. They're incredibly beautiful, they're in shape, they're fucking feminine. They've got good genetics. They've got the kind of genetics that you'd want when you have your own kids. I mean, everyone wants to have kids that look good. I think the only person who imagines having kids with some fucking toad is ugly people themselves. They just know that's all that they can get. No one wants to really replicate fat people out into the world and fucking like genetics that are terrible, like a real ugly face. No one wants to push that out to the world unless they're already ugly. So what makes it a girl, like, I'm gonna say a 9 out of 10. It's gonna be her appearance, beauty. I don't think that I judge based on their appearance. I'm not one of those guys who pretty much, it's very binary for me. If a girl's a 9 out of 10, she looks like a 9 out of 10. I know a lot of the West, they're just trying to recreate the new like beauty standards to include like morals and fucking like how she talks and all that sort of crap. Because then it's up for debate. Like then a 4 out of 10 she-beast can run around and say that because she's got a degree that her value has increased. That's the funny thing about girls in the West, they don't understand that. I'm on $1 million a year. I don't want to take some extra attitude from a chick who's on 70K a year just because she thinks that she has a master's, that impresses me. That doesn't really add any value to a guy who's rich. If I'm rich, which I am, obviously I'm incredibly wealthy, it doesn't add any more to my life that she makes even twice as much money. Like even if she's on 50, even if she's on 100K a year instead of 50. The only guys that are gonna enjoy that are broke boys, and they just want like a fucking sugar mama equivalent. They want like a mummy because they can't do it themselves. These are the guys that fantasize about getting a girlfriend who can like get them shit, who can like, they can date her or like wife her up or something and she'll like increase his standard of living. It's all backwards. Like that's sort of more what the men should be doing. I think in general, when guys are successful, a lot of the time I'll walk around and I would happily take the like waitress chick at McDonald's over some like she-beast that's like nearly 30 years old with a master's degree. Just give me the girl that's 20 that works at McDonald's, that's pleasant, and she's serving, like she's fucking like humbled herself. She's in a position where she has to help people. Like she's in a position that's not fucking like inflated, like fantasy. Like a lot of girls get some master's degree or some sort of degree and they think that their value has now increased and it hasn't. I think that like a lot of intelligence too, like people will say, I want to replicate intelligence. That means that I need to get someone who has a degree. There's all different types of intelligence. A lot of the intelligence that you guys sort of like get sold, because it is a fucking like marketing system, you know, it's a business, is just crap based out of textbooks. Like it's really just how good your memory is. Like can you cram a bunch of crap in there and then like spit it out onto an exam paper? That doesn't mean anything to me in my world. Like it's not about who knows just little tidbits of garbage. It's about who can fucking like take their own creative ideas and like push them in the world and make it happen. A lot of you guys know a bunch of garbage, like just crap, and then you can't influence the real world. Like all that you know is just something that was taught in a book. All that you know is taught by some fucking professor that's on 60K a year. His value in the world is fucking low. Like that's why he's on crap pay. If he knew a lot, he would be in the private sector making a ton of money. A lot of the stuff, yeah, it's just a sales system. Like it's just, they've given you a false idea of what education is. Education is, to be smart means to like follow their framework and pretty much follow their system completely. Just creating like slaves. A lot of the guys, specifically in these like research fields and that, they're being used to just spread like science and medicine journals like through, and then manipulate the masses. So they're fucking like being taught in a specific framework, and certain studies and things like that are being promoted while the opposing studies aren't promoted. And then they present that to the masses as gospel. And then some fucking like guy who drives trucks or something and doesn't do his own research, he turns around and says, oh, but the like guy who's got a doctorate knows, because like he's fucking a doctor in fucking like a specific field that's like medicine of some sort. Kind of like what happened with all the fucking like bug stuff. You know, a lot of the experts were just fucking like essentially shadow men and fall guys. You can, if you control the textbooks and stuff and you only like let people learn within the framework that you want to teach them, it's very easy to control people. And then you can use those fucking like figureheads that you've created as experts to control the masses. Because the masses are getting taught really to fucking value a lot of this education, and a lot of the people that have masters and things like that, they don't know anything. Like, I could go and hire like 5 of them today to do roles for me. A lot of them are just employees. Like, it doesn't train these people to be like entrepreneurial or think for themselves. A lot of it just trains them to be like essentially caged, because their fucking like thought process now, it's just like the very book that they took in. It's not like fucking fluid. A lot of the time shit happens and it changes outside of the scope of what they've been taught, and they can't fucking do anything. Like in business and things like that, I studied to a year 9 education. I didn't need to get a master's in business to make $10 million. You know, I know the shit that works. I fucking just did it by starting multiple businesses and learning along the way. I didn't learn business from a professor broke boy driving a fucking Toyota Corolla. Like, he doesn't know shit about business. If he knew shit about it, he would run a fucking business. A lot of guys, yeah, they go to business school or something, and the professor at some point owned like some failed coffee shop or some bullshit business that fucking like couldn't even be scaled. Doesn't generate fuck all. It's a fucking disaster. It's essentially the blind leading the blind in those places. That's just the way that it goes. You know, the education system needs a massive reform. I think that the education is just for plebs. Like, if I push my kids through school, it's not going to be through like fucking the public system or any of that crap. I don't want them corrupted by a lot of the ideas and shit. A lot of the people going through schools and things like that in the West, they're just like getting indoctrinated to get involved in these social causes and all this other crap. They're getting told that there's like fucking 18 different genders and shit. Instead of focusing on the shit that matters, they're already being taught to like push parts of their like energy and mind into causes that are trash. Like, they're just being fucking like used, essentially. They're getting taught to get involved in social causes and shit that they can never profit off or never even really have a fucking say in. It's fucking really dumb. That's just not shit that I'll have my kids taught, because that shit doesn't matter. Like, it's stupid. Do you think the war on drugs in America was a success? Obviously not. War on drugs in America is solely just so that Big Pharma can fucking be the only drug dealer in town. Like, it's very obvious to me. I mean, it's quite obvious that a lot of the shit will be legalized there, you know, within like the next probably 20 years, but probably the next 15 years. They just have to find a way that they can sort of like bag it, like package it, and then give it to the masses without being too like controversial. You know, you can't just give like the masses fucking amphetamines and shit. And of course they do through like Ritalin and things like that and Adderall, but you can't just give them like actual like crystal meth and shit like that. It's a bit too extreme. But once they realize, like, figure out how they can repackage it and pretty much like merge all the competition together, they will. And they'll fucking just control that circuit as well. I'm sure a lot of them have a large thing to do with how it gets imported into the country anyway. But yeah, it'll just be pushed under one umbrella instead of like, you know, Big Pharma and then the illicit trade. It'll just be one fucking trade. And that's good, I guess, for them, because it merges everything together and makes it easier to control and easier to fucking manage and things like that. It's always going to be a losing fucking field. Like, the more that you ban things, like the more that you make it harder to get, the prices go up. And then people have to do more extreme shit to get the money to get it. It's not really ever going to go away. Like, drugs is not really fucking something that's just going to disappear. Unless you start slamming down massive sentences, and that's not prison time, that's actually just hanging people. Like in fucking UAE, you can't fuck around there. You can't run around there fucking doing anything in drugs or you'll fucking die. Like, or sit in prison for the rest of your life. And the prisons there are fucking some of the hardest in the world. Like they're fucking very difficult. To last 1 year in is like 10 in most other jails. So yeah, they're fucking very difficult. I think that the war on drugs in America or Australia has been a massive failure, obviously. But it's by design to me. Like you gotta wonder why they're so against fucking like illicit substances at all, but then they promote all the rappers and that to talk about like fucking before it was crack and things like that. And then Big Pharma got big enough and now they're talking about like perks and fucking like Xannies and, you know, benzos and fucking opiates and shit like that. Because Big Pharma just pushed the money through that specific industry, and now they promote fucking pillheads who run around and tell everyone else that they should just be fucking living on a bong 24/7, and that just creates more slaves, more fucking people that are brain dead, you know, sitting around smoking weed all day. That's the quickest track to lose at them. You know, I can respect a cokehead or fucking even to a point of fucking like fat head because they're fucking doing shit. The bong head who just sits in the corner fucking like hanging off a bong, that's quite pathetic. Like that's not how you're fucking meant to live your life. It's fucking dumb, especially if you're young. If you've done shit, like if you've already fucking like 40, 50 years old, now you're reflecting on your life. So that's what they don't tell you. Like a lot of you fucking like want to take acid and shrooms and shit like that and all this stuff and DMT, fucking like ibogaine or fucking like ayahuasca. You haven't earned that. Like a lot of you fucking nerds haven't even earned reflection because you've never fucking done anything. Like you haven't fucking done jack shit. That stuff's to reflect on a life lived. That stuff's to like put you've got a puzzle in your head and now you just want to like unjumble a few pieces. But you have to have that like lived experience to reflect on it. A lot of you will be like 25 or like 20 years old, done fucking literally jack shit with your life, and then you'll still be like trying to fucking like reflect or journal or do all this crap, trying to like unjumble your own mind, but there's nothing in it, like because you haven't done jack shit. The guy like Mike Tyson does shrooms and fucking like acid and things like that, DMT, and tries like fucking other shit. That makes sense because he's reflecting on a life like well lived. You know, that's up for your debate if you think he's had a life well lived, but he has lived a fucking quite, I would say, an extreme life. So yeah, he's reflecting on that. A lot of dorks will see that and be like, that means that I need to do ayahuasca, but they've done jack shit. A lot of chicks will fucking like do all that crap and it's just another like fucking escape. Like they think that they're getting all this wisdom and shit, but they don't fucking like, and then you ask them and be like, you know, and their life is still fucking garbage. Like they are fucking apparently taking all this wisdom from the iboga tree and then like 2 years later their life's even fucking worse. You go to those sort of things and 90% are just broke fucking losers there. The thing with drug dealing, as soon as you start, you've essentially like lit a fuse. The bomb will go off. For you, it might go off next week. Like you might be fucking dropping gear off somewhere, you might be doing something and then you get busted straight away. For the next guy, it might be like 5 years down the track, but he's just gonna have 5 years of deals that catch up with him. So he's gonna get massive trafficking. You know, there's no guy running around dealing that's not gonna get caught. Like it's inevitable. Australia has some of the worst snitching in the fucking world. I've seen fucking like all of it. I know that some of these fucking like guys, it's a lot of the dealers and that they're just fucking junkies. So they're just dobbing like that. The protection side of prison in Woodford, I believe, I've been told, is now bigger than the actual mainstream itself because there's so many fucking dogs there. Like they just fucking dob on each other all the time. Thing with junkies, they have no like fucking integrity. Like if someone's a drug addict, to think that they're not gonna snitch is crazy because they're addicted to drugs. So they fucking like guards and fucking like cops and shit like that, they know they're dealing with a weakling. You know, like someone who's already got a fucking massive monkey on his back. He's gonna justify throwing his mates under the bus because he wants to get fucking like back on the jab. And he's already like, that's the love of his life. He's already justified it in his mind. If he can get back and like get the fucking reds back in his arm, that's great. Like he can throw everyone under the bus for that because he's already fucking like incredibly weak. So a lot of that shit is a loser's game. Like you can't really win. When I was selling drugs and doing shit, the iPhone was only like an iPhone, like a few had been out. Most people didn't have one. There was no one like fucking, a lot of the technology now has caught up. So the surveillance has caught up and also the police have built a massive database of snitches. The hardest thing with Australia is if you're successful, even in fucking like normal, If someone goes from being like a dope fucking guy and then becomes successful in other businesses, the police will just never leave him alone. Because I know so many of these fucking losers there that just sit around and just put in like Crime Stopper reports on people nonstop. It's just like, it's the tall poppy country of fucking anything. Someone tries to do something like outside the box and guys just, and chicks too, just jump on his back and drag him back into the bucket. Like he's trying to fucking do shit, and the like peasants just start, it's like the monkey climbs the ladder and then the other monkeys start like fucking throwing things at it because he stood out. And then he falls back down and the next one's like, fucking, I don't want to climb up because people are going to throw things at me as well. You've got to understand that like a hard part of success is understanding that people are going to like fucking point at you and try to make fun of you. But once you cross that bridge and you are actually successful, it doesn't mean shit. Like just because some fucking dork gets online and talks crap about me or fucking like says something or something like that, his results don't match mine. Like this is my platform. Like your results, if they don't match mine, to me, you're just delusional. Like if someone wants to jump on and they're as successful as me, they've done shit that I've done, they're fucking like doing shit and they want to fucking like have a debate, I don't really give a fuck. Like I don't care, but I'll still like understand that they have a position to talk to me. A lot of these guys who are below me and fucking like just peasants will jump on and just talk garbage. And that just shows like a lack of self-awareness. You don't understand where you stand. Just because you're standing there pointing like 4 fingers at someone, like the finger's still pointing at yourself. Like it's fucking dumb. A lot of guys lack awareness completely and they'll talk shit about someone else and then like ignore every single flaw of their own, when often their flaws are even further than the person that they're pointing fingers at. That's dumb. Who's more honest, criminals or corporate businessmen? Corporate businessmen are just gangsters, but they're in fucking like disguise. It's done in legal ways, like it's done with contracts and fucking like leverage. Like they get guys to sign contracts, specifically a lot of the time guys who don't really understand the contract that they're signing. Like these, I'll use rappers again for an example. They can lock rappers into doing all sorts of shit for them. Because it's like me being as rich as I am and I run around and get a heap of these upcoming influencers and I pay them and lock them into a contract that they have to pretty much like fucking do whatever I say and promote me endlessly. And then 1 or 2 of them become massively successful, but then they're locked into a contract with me and they have to promote me now, or they have to break the contract. And then if they break the contract, there's fucking like massive amounts of issues that'll hit them in the face. That's what a lot of the businessmen do all the time. Like that's an investment. So yes, I would say that corporate like businessmen are gangsters, but they're not gangsters in a confrontational way. It's like gangsters with a smile and a contract and lawyers and things like that behind them. They're good at putting people in bad deals. If you're not really around that, like if you, especially me, like when I first started fucking like meeting startup teams and things like that and getting in SAFs and like agreements and contracts and like funding, that took a while to fucking like get the hang of. Because my idea of confrontation, or like if you're putting someone in a bad deal, you just do it in their face. But a lot of their shit is like shake your hand and then get you to sign a contract and you fucking didn't read like the 50 pages of it, and now, or you didn't get it read over by a lawyer and like on page 49 it had some fucking like clause that fucks you over. So you have to, it's completely different. It's like a lot of the corporate businessmen, like it's done with a smile. Like they'll fuck you over and look you in the eye and smile and pretty much tell you that they're not fucking you over. Whereas other gangsters will pretty much tell you that they're fucking you over and that you can't do shit about it. It's just expected. A lot of the shit that you learn like on the streets is just a handshake. Like if you say you're gonna do something, you have to do it or shit will happen. Like if I say I'm gonna deliver X on fucking this date and I don't do it, I know that there's consequences. I know that I have to get like the fucking guns together or fucking like front up. A lot of the shit in like the corporate world, yeah, it's just done with like a fucking contracts and all the bullshit. Like it's not done. Like you can handshake agreement with someone and they can just fucking break it. They don't give a shit. Like a lot of the stuff they just think too, like risk to reward ratio, like they'll burn contacts to like further themselves. A lot of the shit doesn't really happen in the criminal world unless it's like a declaration of war. Like if someone fucks you and you crew over, like they've had to have made a calculated decision that shit's gonna happen. In the corporate world, I don't know, like it's a lot more passive. Like it's a lot less direct. But there are a lot of people that have, yeah, you got to get all the contracts and shit read and signed over and fucking like looked over. You got to have good lawyers. You've got to like spend X amount on legal fucking like reading all the crap and doing all these things. You try to take like a liberty and trust someone. and be like, yeah, that's fine. You know, we've done fucking like 10 deals. The 11th one, I don't need to fucking like have as much like legal crap, like a framework in place, and they fuck you over. They're like, yeah, now's my chance. It's the corporate world. Yeah, it's more passive. Like they fuck you over with a smile, but they don't expect like any blowback. In the fucking gangster world, or drug dealing world, if you fuck someone over, like there is blowback. You got to expect that, or you got to have a massive amount of leverage so they can't do shit. It's just it's the way it goes. What's one business lesson you learned from selling dope? Always get the money up front. I wasn't really one of those fucking credit dorks. I know a lot of guys think that they're playing gangster and they're like drug dealer and they run around and tick everyone fucking up massive amounts of money and then they can't collect it. Because it's very difficult to collect off crackheads. You know, it's very difficult to fucking like intimidate people that have an addiction. Some people, specifically if they have an addiction, they're on a death, like fucking pretty much like a death dance, or they're on like a death wish. You know, they don't care what happens to them. So even if like they owe you like 50K or 100K or something, some of them just won't pay it back because they want you to do something. Like they want you to get them or fucking like get your hands dirty. And that's difficult. Like you can't fucking like just be chasing debts all the time. They add up. And then people get together too. If like this guy owes you 50K and this guy owes you 80K, they get together and they're like, I'm not paying him back, but they start to multiply. So it could be like 10 people or more fucking blowing out, and then your debts can like carry, where you might be owed like 300-400K one month, and then it starts to blow out further. You know, it's a lot of the fucking like debt games and all that crap, that's shit. Like it's very difficult to fucking like get money back from like addicts or even anyone in that sort of lifestyle, because a lot of them are fuck ups. You know, like a lot of them have gambling addictions, like drug addictions, fucking like they just have no integrity. So it's, yeah, you got to get cash up front, and nothing matters until you've been paid. It doesn't matter what someone says. The amount of times I've been told fucking like that, oh, I'm gonna buy fucking 10 kilos of this and I'm gonna do this and I'll pay this and I'll pay that, and then it doesn't fucking happen. You know, I learned that 99% of guys just talk pure shit. You know, it's the 1% that do the work for everyone. Like that's like anything, like any crew or anything. 99% of guys do fuck all, and then 1% do fucking like everything. It's the way it goes. 99% of guys running around sell like fucking points and fucking grams of bullshit, and then the 1% are selling like tons of the shit. They're doing all the fucking work. That's pretty much just how it fucking goes. Why is Australia so pro-surveillance? Australia's very pro-surveillance because it's about controlling the population. Australia's surrounded by water, so it's very difficult to fucking like get shit in, but it's very difficult to fucking like get away, as you saw after the fucking lockdowns and all the bullshit. It's difficult to fucking like get out of there. Australia is sold the narrative that it's the lucky country, but it's not. Like if you fucking go travel, I've traveled to fucking dozens of countries. I wouldn't even consider Australia in the top 10. The issues with Australia is it's the people are fucking, they're still like, you know, hardworking guys and things like that. They're still like fucking guys that want to do shit, but it's very like feminized. A lot of the guys there are soy boys, or they're like soy boys in disguise. They think they're like this Aussie bloke, but it's just the thing that's been propagated by the fucking media machine. They think that they're Aussie just because they're some fucking beer swilling fucking like soy boy with a fucking beer belly. That's dumb. You know, they're sold fucking like so many stories there. The lucky country, you know, the story of the tradie who fucking like bees a pisshead and gets on the fucking gambling and like she's betting on the horses and all that crap. A lot of the shit they're taught is just like crap. You know, like they're sold fucking like Melbourne Cup Day and all this crap just as an excuse to gamble. A lot of the shit that they're pretty much sold is just like just consumerism garbage. You know, a lot of fucking like a lot of the guys there don't know what it means to be a man. Like, and it's by design. It's very hard to be like manly over there because a lot of the fucking like, you turn the news on and shit like that, you turn on like The Project or something like that, and it's just soy boys like pretty much just degrading men and fucking telling everyone how good women are. And it's just like, you turn on fucking like all the like radios and shit stations and it's like these overweight chicks pretty much laughing at dudes. And then if some dude turns around and he's like, you're like a she beast, he'd be fucking cancelled. It's just like the dude's tongue is essentially removed over there. He can't fucking like do much. Like he can't have too much of an opinion, and he has to fucking like control his like fucking aggression and things like that. They need to be like quite neutered. he can't like even raise his voice in his own house because there can be consequences where the cops show up and fucking break the door down and charge you for fucking like DV. Over there, if you get charged with DV, the chick doesn't have to fucking say that you did it. The cops can just take a fucking like DV out on you. If someone says that you're yelling or something in your house and the neighbours are like, yeah, I called the police because this guy's raising his voice in his own home, and then the cops show up, they can take a DV out on you, and it can fucking like drag with you for fucking years. Even if the chick says nothing happened, they can still fucking like take a domestic violence order out on you. Police enforced. That means that fucking like you're fucked. Everyone knows that you got a DV, that you can't hold a rifle for years. You can't fucking like, it's gonna sit on your record. You can get a DV breach now because the DV exists when it shouldn't have existed. Domestic violence order. I know so many dudes sitting in prison for DV, shit that they didn't even do. Dudes sitting in prison for the first DV offence because they say that he can't get out because he's a threat to the chick. He can't get bail because the chick's so in danger. That shit's a real fucking issue in Australia. Domestic violence laws are fucking hectic over there. I see that they're having like new laws out based around coercive control as well, which is kind of like a fucking like word that they've pretty much made up. Like a lot of things, that can mean a lot of things. Like she can just say, oh, I feel in danger, or like he's controlling this, and you can get fucked. You know, it's very difficult. And again, that's inviting the police into your own house, and you can't really do much. Like they just have to show up and say that they've heard like had a complaint, or like that they think a crime has happened inside, and then they can enter your house and do fuck knows what in there. Like unless you've got cameras in your house, like I did. I have fucking like always had cameras in my house everywhere that upload to a cloud. So if they fucked me over, there's going to be consequences. My lawyer or like barrister at the time was getting like fucking updates because the cops would come around all the time and try and fuck me around. The police over there too, it's just the soy boys again. Like most of the cops over there are soy boys. Like they're just the dorks who were picked on in school, and now they're like trying to enforce for like milady. You know, they're like trying to fucking like be the big boy now that they got the gun on the fucking hip that they can't fucking use. They're trying to be like the fucking like punisher. You know, they punish alpha male behaviour and like reward beta male behaviour. Like 99% of the cops here are fucking dorks, like soy boys running around, fucking bellies, can't do jack shit. But then there are fucking serious police. That's the funny thing with Australia. You see the soy boys and you pretty much tell them to get fucked, and then your door gets smashed in at like 4 a.m. by like fucking CERT, a fucking SWAT team equivalent. And they're not soy boys. They're all fucking like ex-military, like commandos and shit. And they'll fuck you up. That's just the way it goes. But yeah, that's my take on fucking like Australia being pro-surveillance. I think you've seen pretty much since the bug why they do the shit that they do. A lot of this like woman fucking catering for it's just a way of controlling the masses as well. A lot of the things in Australia, yeah, the discipline is just done by the police, and it's fucking like really, really bad. You know, the discipline itself is that they just send people to prison, and then people get out even more fucked up because they're not fucking get anything out of it. Like they get no assistance in there. And then these are the same people having kids, and then they're just fucking like fucking the kids up even further. So yeah, Australia's pro-surveillance for all those reasons that I said. It's also pro-surveillance because they're running a fucking psyop with the bikies now. The bikies over there are responsible for like, you know, maybe a few percent of the crime, maybe less, but they get 99% of the press because they want to fucking like scare people into passing all these laws that they're passing, these surveillance laws. They tell you that you need to be scared of it, when in reality they're like only fucking really a threat to each other. You know, they're not running around hurting the fucking average Joe. The average Joe doesn't really have anything to fear from them. But they want you afraid, so when they pass all the laws that they use to control you, I see over there they're passing like a fucking law where you can't even troll. Like you can't even be an anon and get online and say something, like if they say it's controversial. And who the fuck knows what they'll consider controversial, even if you say like that you don't like a certain political party or something, you'll probably get fucking police turn up at your house and fucking like smash you on the ground. And it's pretty much turning into like a mini China. And what's happening over there, the people are getting like fucking broken. They're getting like really far from what men are, and they're breaking men. Like they're breaking down those like masculine like fucking characteristics of like a guy who stands up for himself and a guy who like wants to like be self-sovereign. Now a lot of it they're saying is run by the police, the government. So the man who's like the free thinker is in fucking massive jeopardy over there. So when he has his own kids, he just pushes them through like the fucking public system and they just get like indoctrinated to just be completely fucked up. Australia itself is probably one of like the worst slave-minded countries in the world. You just have to turn the fucking news on over there. It's literally probably the worst news that I've ever seen in the world. It's so fucking like catered to women. It's not even funny. And it's not even catered to like real women though. It's catered to like these weaponized feminists. Like it's not every woman is a fucking feminist. Like, there's a difference between feminists to me. Like there's feminists that like want women to have more like power and influence and things like that. And they're like still like in shape and doing shit. Like they're pretty much practicing what they preach. But a lot of the feminists over there are just whales and they just use it as like a fucking excuse for their bad behavior. They don't want any standards. You know, they just want the guys to blame. And a lot of the dudes over there, when they do get partners and that, they're pretty much like a whipping boy. I've known a lot of them. A lot of them are pretty much like, to even ask like a guy, a friend out, like to come out after he's married, after 30, you'd be like, he's like, oh, I have to like ask my wife and like, I don't know, man, like, oh, I'd have to be back by 10 o'clock. Like, it's really fucking like, they're really fucking lost it over there. And then the women are so unhappy because they're with fucking like soy boys. A lot of them escaped into video games and bullshit. They're really like losing what it means to be a man over there. I really fucking worry about that country if there ever is like a fucking incident. I don't even know if they could raise any sort of like resistance. A lot of the guys, yeah, they're just fucking soy boys over there. Specifically in the big cities, the only chance it would be over there would be like the country towns. They'd still probably have some fucking like go about them. The big cities, the guys are completely fucked. Alpha males dying out. Yes, of course they're dying out. The issue with why they're dying out is because a lot of the beta males are in tech and they control the platforms and they reward alpha or neuter alpha male behavior and they reward beta male behavior. Same as all the laws. The laws in general are only exist to neuter alphas. Like if you think about it deeply, like not on a surface level like these Reddit soy boys would do, like all the alpha behavior, if you're like an alpha, like do you really need the law? Like do you really need fucking like all the rules and crap? This only really benefits the soy boy. You know, it doesn't really like, we don't need 600 fucking like legislation for fucking like just existing. Like, you know, there should be maybe like 8 things that you can't do, like even the 10 commandments or something. And then, but instead they have like fucking 600 different little fucking bullshit clauses. So if they want to fuck certain people, they can still like get you, like fuck you over in some way. Like as soon as you get in trouble by the police for one like thing, they try and fuck you over for like 100 little bullshit things as well. So when it goes to court, it sounds more serious. Like instead of just getting you for like fucking, for me, instead of getting me for like trafficking, they still charge me with a bunch of like bullshit stuff as well. So then when I went to court, it paints a picture that you're some fucking like demon. It's just a fucking strategy. Yeah, so of course they're dying out. They've always died though. Like if you think about it, the alphas would have been the guys going to war. Like since the dawn of time, they would have been guys dying in battle because those are the characteristics. Like you look at countries like Russia, they have a massive imbalance towards women and men. Like a lot of the men died. So there's still like fucking 10% or more women in the country itself than men, because a lot of the men die in the battles. Like it's pretty difficult over there. It's a hard place to live. A lot of the men have to take on dangerous jobs and stuff still. So they're more likely to die. And if they don't die though, they're still more likely to like be fucked up, like be injured and shit. So I think alphas are dying out because a lot of the beta male behavior, the worm itself, he takes a lot less risk. He gets so much less of a reward of life. But if all you're considering, like some of you dorks just want to live as long as possible. Like, you don't care if you just live as like some fucking like pretty much dork glued to a PlayStation controller as long as you get like your 90 years out of you. That's crap. Like I'd rather just get 50 as me. I'd rather get 50 as me than 900 as most of you guys. So that's just the way it goes. The guy who takes the risks and fucking like does shit, like he's going to be the guy that has the life to remember. I wouldn't trade my life with anyone. If someone said you can be anyone in the world, or anyone that's ever existed, or yourself, I would be me. It's just the way it is. A lot of you will fantasize about being someone else, and then you're men, like you fucking could have been that person, and you still can. I'm not saying that you can be like fucking some astronaut flying to Mars, but you can still be like on that path. Like as a man, you can be anything. That's what they don't tell you. They don't want you to fucking like know your own power. A lot of you are just also trained to watch other guys live and also critique their life instead of like doing shit yourself. That's fucking a disaster to me. I can't even imagine living like that. That's like the life of a fucking worm. Why do you think porn is free? Well, it's pretty much, I answered a porn question already. Porn's free because you're the product. You're being programmed, like obviously. The shit's free. It's only free for one reason. Like they're fucking like pushing you in a certain direction. They're training you to be an observer. A lot of these porn cucks though aren't really meant to reproduce, like in life. There's always been something that stopped like these fucking dorks from reproducing their fucking like crappy genetic string to the world. They're just not meant to reproduce. And now they've got like porn and shit that they can have an addiction to instead, and it keeps them like sedated so that they're not fucking like rioting in the street. Because guys, if they can't get laid, like it can be a big problem. Like guys that don't get sex, it's problematic. But now they can just sit and watch porn all day and fucking like sit around with their pants around their ankles, so they're distracted. Like a lot of them are walking around, their head's completely cloudy because they're fucking like having like dopamine explosions all the time and like fucking watching porn and shit, and their mind's just clouded completely. Like you're not meant to just sit around jerking off all day. You know, it's some dude tells me he's like jacking off like every few days or something, like, but not watching porn. I can understand that, like if he's not having sex. But if someone's just sitting around watching porn, jerking off and shit like that, that's like really fucking low value. A lot of the guys in general now walk around and they're just completely fucking like, there's just nothing in them, like just completely docile because their brain is clouded because they're watching too much porn and they're jerking off too much. So they can't even imagine like having sex with a chick. They're just demotivated completely. A lot of guys watching this, I imagine that's their case as well. They're completely demotivated. And the reason why a lot of you guys watch porn and do shit, you just don't do enough. Like, of course, if I just sat around every day and just fucking like sat in my room all day, every single day, I would be like, I'm gonna jerk off as well. Because there's nothing else to do. You think that you're bored, so then you're just like, oh, I may as well. But when you're busy, and when you're doing shit and you're living a fucking like normal, healthy life, you don't really have the opportunity to just sit around and jack off all day. See, a lot of you guys like the no-fap tards, they're like not focused on like the causation, they're just focused on like it's like they've got a sore foot and then they don't like realize that further up they've got like fucking an injury on the thigh and now it's like moved down and their foot's swollen. They're focused on like the small fucking part, but they're not focused on the root of the issue. I only focus on the roots of the issue. That's why my life's fucking great. I don't focus on these fucking like small things. And their issue is that they're just not busy enough. They're just sitting around and they're fucking bored. Of course you're gonna fucking jerk off all day. It doesn't mean that like, you gotta be busy. It doesn't fucking like, that's normal. You know, they say idle hands are the devil's playthings. It's a true fucking thing. Man's not meant to just sit around all day with nothing to do. That's why a lot of you guys just fucking like get distracted and play video games and all this crap and watch Netflix and shit like that. If you think of the caveman or the fucking like guy who's building shit, like he's working all day, like he's doing stuff. He's like fucking like, and there's always shit to do. Like if you're in an old tribe or something, you'd walk out and they'd be like, you have to like rearrange all the shelter and like get food and fucking like make food, all this crap, it's constant. It's not like now where you can just fucking like work online and fuck around and like skive off and dick around and fucking like, you have all this free time to just fucking like do whatever you want. That's not really how man's meant to be. And that's why you're getting these fucking like side effects. Why do you think so many guys get pissed off when you called them pussies for not fighting back? Because they are pussies. It's fucking obvious. The guy who gets red-faced typing, he's the triggered one. Like he's the one that the message is for. I know that. That's why I do the shit. And I don't do my own videos. Like I'm not the guy that fucking like edits them and shit, but they're made to be controversial. I know that the guy who fucking is replying, telling me he's not that way, is that way. It's the way it is. The truth hurts, of course. If someone tells me something and it's not true, it just bounces off me completely. If someone's like, you're a pussy for this, I'd just be like, think whatever, like I don't give a shit. I know I'm not. Been in situations where that's been the opposite. But if it was true, and the old me, I mean now I accept all my fucking like flaws themselves and fucking like shortcomings and shit, so it doesn't really have an effect on me. But back then, I would be the guy, you know, typing back, saying shit and doing things because he's triggered. He's only triggered because it's hit a sore point. He's hit a point that fucking like he can relate to, and he's like, fuck, that hurts. The truth always hurts. It's the way it is. A lot of guys, yeah, this is the cowardice as a virtue. They're trained though, that's conditioning. Like a lot of guys are conditioned that their life's so fucking big so that when shit happens, they're not going to pick the rifles up and go on the street when the government eventually takes over their life. They're conditioned that they fucking like, God doesn't exist, so they're their own God, and they have too much to lose now. That's fucking like social programming, fucking like 101. So when shit happens and they have to fight back, they're too scared to, because they don't think that there's anything after this. They think that they're not going to fucking win. And even if they fucking lose, like they lose everything, because there's nothing else like happening. So that's social programming. Programming that man is his own God. That's fucking like by design. It's done by the government. Man's his own God, but eventually that migrates to the government is your God. That's just the fucking way that it works. They tell you that you have too much to lose, that there's nothing in the afterlife or anything, so now you think that like, I can't take the risk, I can't fight back, I have to fucking like bear the brunt, I have to live my maximum amount of years. And you can live all those years as a slave. That's fucking great. Of course. If I was running shit, that's exactly what I would do. I'd condition people exactly the same. So I understand why they do shit. I understand why people are afraid. They're fucking like, just in general, cowardly. They're like the fucking like frightened guy in fucking like Wizard of Oz. Was it the lion? Had no fucking balls. It's pretty much what people like now. A lot of guys will look like they have some go about them, but they still have no ticker. Like it's just, they got nothing inside. A lot of guys will, yeah, just act like they got go about them and they only do because they take drugs. Like, and then you take away the drugs, or like they're like coming down in jail or something and they just fucking cry in their cell every day. And just think about how they can get high again so they can feel like a big man. It's fucking pathetic. But that's just the way that it goes, guys. That's fucking just shit that I've seen. But yeah, in general, there's a big narrative spread now that like science is God. And eventually it's essentially government's God. Because who do you think creates all the fucking like scientific documents and journals and fucking books that they program the scientists with? And then they program you, the government. So it's very much fucking like, it's a like social fucking construct. God itself is, yeah, pretty much being crushed in the West, replaced by government. But that's enough for today, lads. It's enough of a fucking trip down the rabbit hole. I don't think anyone's ready for that yet.